Hello and welcome to the entomology portion of the virtual winter field days for sugarcane producers. A quick overview of what we saw last year in 2020. We had a fairly mild winter, which can often influence pest pressure going into the growing season. However, recent evidence over the past 20 years suggests cold temperatures only limit boar populations when it gets very, very cold, such as in the winter leading into the 2018 growing season when it got down to 14 degrees in parts of the cane belts. More important in determining boar pressure are spring conditions, particularly a wetter spring in April and May can increase sugarcane boar populations. However, Mexican rice borer is influenced or increased more by dry conditions, which I think is one of the reasons that we had more prevalent Mexican rice borer infestations in parts of the industry than we've had in the past. We had a bit of a dry spring, and then in some areas of the state, particularly St. Landry Parish, it stayed dry into the summer, and we sprayed for Mexican rice borer a lot more than we have in other years past. Sugarcane aphid is also a pest that benefits from dry conditions. We saw some pretty heavy infestations in some fields. It was rather spotty. And as we typically see, those infestations tended to crash or decline rapidly once we get into the late summer, particularly in August. Last year, we also saw the Mexican rice borer move into new parishes of rapides and avoyals. These are the northernmost detections of this pest to date. But this continued expansion is something that we are anticipating. I think very likely in the next few years, we'll see the Mexican rice borer move into some of the river parishes, particularly Iberville and St. Mary and also Assumption. Those parishes are right along the advancing edge. So I think within the next 5 to 10 years, most of the cane throughout the Louisiana industry will be infested with Mexican rice borer. That's why it's important to be able to learn to distinguish these two pests and know a bit about their differences. The Mexican rice borer, shown here on the left, has a light head capsule and parallel stripes of broken lines. On the right is a sugarcane borer larvae. They tend to have a darker head capsule and a more spotted pattern. And if you can see, larger larvae tend to have visible bristles or hairs along their body, which aren't typically visible on the Mexican rice borer. It looks like most of our management tactics we're using for the sugarcane borer are also going to be effective for the Mexican rice borer. And in parts of the state where they occur together, they're often managed as a complex. A lot of acres that were sprayed for Mexican rice borer and sugarcane borer are sprayed now with Prevathon. This has become the #1 chemistry in the industry, and I've got some good evidence as to why that transfer has begun to shift. We have a couple products labeled still. Confirmed, the one that's been widely used for many years past, as well as Diamond. And we had some recent studies that looked at insecticide timing to try to get an example of an idea of which products are providing the longest control. And here, what I want you to notice is that the Prevathon over 2 years performed about as well when we sprayed it 4 weeks before infestations occurred as we did when we sprayed it right on threshold. The other two products, Diamond and Confirm, did not show a good level of activity when sprayed early compared to our untreated checks in each year. This year we wanted to take that research a little farther, so we sprayed some high rates in the field early in the season, first week of June, and we took leaf sheath tissue samples to the Ag Chemistry Department laboratories for analysis, and they're able to determine the insecticide concentrations of each of those products. We did this every 2 weeks for 10 weeks after spraying. That allows us to compare the levels of insecticide present in the leaf tissue to our results from laboratory assays where we know what toxic levels for sugarcane borer larvae are. And to go over some of this data, on the y-axis we have the insecticide concentration present in those leaf sheaths over time. As you can see, this is confirmed, very high level present 1 day after spraying, but it declines very rapidly by the first 2 weeks. This yellow dashed line here is the LC90, or the concentration required to kill 90% of larvae. So once the concentration declines below this level, you would expect the level of control you're achieving to start dropping pretty significantly. And I think by the time you get out to 4 weeks, you aren't getting any activity at all with confirm. Novaluron, which is diamond, declines much more slowly after spraying, with some concentration present up to 8 weeks. But really, you start losing control here at about the 3-week level, with some control still being achieved going out a little further. Previton, or chlorantraniliprole, is the one that really sets itself out. Again, we see a steep decline after 2 weeks, and then it starts to kind of level out. And this chemical is very, very toxic to borer larvae, and so the chemical stays present in leaf tissues at an effective level going out to about 8 weeks. And I think here we're getting full systemic activity. The leaf sheaths being sampled at the target internode after 8 weeks wouldn't have been present, as cane is growing really quickly at this time of year, so those would have been formed after the initial application, which I believe demonstrates that the chemical is fully taken up by tissues and transferred up the plant to newly growing leaves. And so I think this adds to a sort of growing body of evidence from our field studies that demonstrate Previton is providing a much longer period of protection and is getting fully systemic. And these results are consistent with our field studies, as well as some observations from a lot of the consultants around the industry that have moved to spraying this product. I think this is going to be very beneficial to the industry, particularly in reducing the number of fields which require multiple insecticide applications. A few changes in the future in terms of what insecticides are available. Confirm is no longer going to be manufactured. Gowan is dropping that product. I think this is because it was really widely used in the Louisiana sugarcane industry, but hadn't been used in other ag industries for a number of years. So as the market started to decline here, they've decided to drop that product. It may come back in the future if a generic manufacturer wants to pick it up, but that's probably going to be unavailable moving forward. Previton is set to be replaced by a new formulation called Vantacor. I talked to the FMC reps, and they've indicated Previton will probably still be available in 2021, but after that, it's going to be phased out and replaced with this new product. Same active ingredient, just quite a bit higher concentration. And so I've put some conversions here. You only need 1.2 ounces to get the equivalent of the low labeled rate of Previton, 14 ounces, and 1.7 to get the high labeled rate of Previton of 20 ounces. They're also increasing the max rate you'll be allowed to spray in one application up to the equivalent of 29 ounces of Previton. I'm not really sure where that's going to fit in sugarcane. We are achieving a really high level of control with the current labeled rates, or even getting successful control with that lower end rate as well. So I don't think there's going to be many instances where we're putting out that real high rate. Moving on to some of our varietal work. This is the most recent sugarcane borer variety test done at the St. Gabriel station. We've included a number of our key commercial varieties as well as some of the advanced experimental varieties. On the y-axis, we have our percentage of bored internodes. A few things to note. 950 has been our most susceptible variety for a number of years. 201, this is our third year of data on that, and it appears to be highly susceptible. That's a newly released variety. So if you plan on planting that, I encourage you to monitor it closely for borer infestations. Our more resistant commercial varieties are 838 and 299. You'll see these have levels of injury only less than 5% compared to close to 30% in some of those highly susceptible varieties. So a big advantage in terms of borer management with our resistant varieties. Others that show some moderate levels of resistance or intermediate levels include 283, the newly released 739, as well as 615, the other 2012 series that was released. We also looked at Mexican rice borer varietal resistance. This is something that we've had done in the past, working with some Texas A&M colleagues at their Beaumont station. This is naturally occurring pest pressure. It's a rice research station primarily, so they have high rice borer populations. Again, you'll see 201 way out here on the right side, showing very high levels of injury, even more than 950. 885 also appears to be susceptible, whereas some of our more resistant varieties include the recently released 615 and 739, as well as 299. 838 is kind of an anomaly in this trial. We've looked at this in other tests, and it appeared to be highly susceptible to Mexican rice borer. And so there may be some sort of environmental interaction going on here with this variety. That's something we hope to investigate a little bit further. Here kind of summarize all that. Most of our varieties that possess resistance to the sugarcane borer are also resistant to the Mexican rice borer. The exception to that rule is this 838 variety that we still think is susceptible. These ratings are now being backed by multiple years of data. And so 299 still appears to be showing a good level of resistance, as well as 838 to sugarcane borer. These are probably more like moderately resistant, and we still have a lot of more susceptible varieties out there that you'll have to watch more closely in terms of borer management. Some ongoing work we're doing, hoping to continue next year, includes continued examination of yield loss and insecticide efficacy data for some of our less studied pests, including the sap feeders, sugarcane aphids, and West Indian canefly. With the winter we've had so far this year, I would anticipate caneflies may be an issue this season, as we've seen in the past with some of our real mild winters, that we have more widespread infestations of that pest. We're also looking at wireworms, looking at some new products, things coming through the pipeline, and there may be some alternatives in future years to the current product Thimet that's used throughout the industry. And I will keep you updated to those. I may discuss this more at some of the summer meetings. We're also hoping to determine what is the severity of yield loss and how we can try to get some idea of when these soil applied insecticides are going to provide some benefit. I'd like to take a quick moment to acknowledge our funding from the Sugarcane League, which is critical to our research efforts, as well as the staff at both the St. Gabriel Sugar Station and the USDA station at Homa that support all this research, and my graduate students, as well as some growers and consultant cooperators that help facilitate some of our on-farm work. I've put my contact information there at the bottom of this slide. You can feel free to email or call or text me anytime, and I'll be happy to try to provide answers to your questions. Also, I'll be available at the virtual Q&A or grower meeting sessions that are being held this winter. Thank you.